June 9th, 1944. A road outside the village of Coquigny in the Normandy hedgerows, 3 kilometers west of Saint-Mère-Église. A forward platoon of American glider infantry has pushed too far and gotten cut off. The Germans are swinging around the flank. The men are pinned in a shallow roadside ditch with one way out, a gap in the hedgerow 40 yards behind them. One man stands up. Private First Class Charles de Glopper, 6'7", 240 pounds, a farm kid from Grand Island, New York, holding a Browning automatic rifle that weighs 19.4 pounds empty. He does not drop into cover. He walks out of the ditch, onto the open road, in full view of the German guns, and he opens fire. That is a suicidal thing to do. He knows it. He does it anyway, because the Germans looking at him are Germans not looking at his platoon. This is the exact thing the German army built its entire infantry squad to prevent. And on the attack, the American BAR became the single hardest problem German infantry ever had to solve. They rarely solved it. The German way of war had an answer for infantry firepower, and the answer was a machine. The German squad, the Gruppe, was not built around its riflemen. It was built around one weapon. First the MG-34, and then, from 1942, the gun that gave the whole war its soundtrack, the MG-42, belt-fed, air-cooled, a cyclic rate that averaged 1,200 rounds a minute, so fast the individual shots blurred into one long, tearing sound. American troops called it Hitler's buzzsaw. When the barrel glowed too hot to fire, a trained crew could swap it out in under 10 seconds. Round for round, it was a better machine gun than anything the Americans carried. The Germans knew it. So did the Americans. But it came with a price written into the design. The MG-42 was crew-served. It needed 2 to 3 men, a gunner, an assistant feeding the belt, an ammo bearer. On the move, it fired from a bipod. For real work, it sat on a heavy tripod, pre-aimed along fixed lanes of fire. To relocate it, the crew had to break it down, carry it, set it back up, and lay it in again. The German machine gun was devastating, but it was devastating from a position. It had to stop to be dangerous. The American BAR did not. The Browning automatic rifle was John Moses Browning's design, first demonstrated just outside Washington in 1917, and first fired in anger by American troops in the last weeks of the First World War. But the weapon that went ashore in 1944 was a different animal, the M1918A2. It fired the full-power 30-06 cartridge, the same round as the M1 Garand, from a 20-round box magazine. Gas-operated, air-cooled, fired from an open bolt. And here is the strange part. The A2 had no semi-automatic setting at all. Ordnance had deleted it. The wartime BAR fired full auto only, at 2 rates, a fast setting around 650 rounds a minute and a slow setting around 400. It was heavy, 19.4 pounds empty, past 24 with the bipod and all its fittings. Load a gunner with a full combat set of magazines, and he was carrying close to 40 pounds of steel and brass. And all of it was carried, loaded, aimed, and fired by one man. That was the entire idea. One man. The U.S. Army had gone looking for a weapon that could give a rifle squad its own automatic fire without chaining 3 men and a tripod to a fixed spot on the map. The BAR was the answer. 1 gunner per 12-man squad in the Army. The Marines liked it so much they eventually put 3 in every squad, 1 per fire team. Here is what that mobility bought on the battlefield. American doctrine was simple to say and brutal to do. Base of fire and maneuver. One element pins the enemy in place with automatic fire. The other element moves, flanks, and kills. The bar was the heart of the base of fire, and because one man carried it, that base of fire could get up and move with the squad. The Germans noticed. A U.S. Army Combat Lessons report out of Europe recorded a pattern that kept repeating. German troops would hear the bar open up, mistake it for a machine gun, and start working out where the machine gun nest was. By the time they massed fire on the spot, the bar gunner had already picked up, moved, and was shooting at them from somewhere else. Try to picture that from the German side. You are pinned by what sounds like an automatic weapon in a fixed position. You do everything right. You find it, you concentrate fire on it, and it is not there anymore. It is 40 yards to your left, still firing. You cannot kill a position that keeps walking away. That is the real reason the bar gunner became a priority target for German riflemen and machine gunners alike. The man with the bar was the one keeping the American attack alive. Kill him, and the squad's mobile firepower died with him. U.S. field reports out of Italy credited the bar with breaking up German counterattack after German counterattack. Which brings us to the most famous image of the bar in action, the one in the movies. A gunner walking straight at the enemy line, firing the weapon from the hip, hosing the trench the whole way in. The military had a name for it: walking fire, marching fire. The French called it feu de marche, and it was baked into the bar from the beginning. Browning designed the original 1918 gun for exactly this, advancing while firing to keep enemy heads down. General Patton was its loudest champion in the Second World War. He wanted his infantry firing on the move, around every few paces, the whistle of passing bullets suppressing the defenders while the line closed the distance. And here is the part the movies leave out. As a standard way of fighting, walking fire mostly did not work, and the men who tried to make it work paid the bill. General William Depew, who fought his way up through the ranks of the 90th Infantry Division, wrote afterward that unsupported marching fire became almost a fad, and that against dug-in Germans in good positions, it simply walked attackers into the kill zone. The instant the advancing infantry stopped firing to make the final rush, the German defenders rose back up and cut them down. It only worked, Depew said, when a static base of fire was pinning the enemy the entire time. The reality is that the bar did the overwhelming majority of its killing from the prone, from cover, in short aimed bursts, not walking into the open spraying from the hip. So how do we square that with de Glopper on the road at Coquigny, walking into the open, firing exactly like the legend? Because that is what the legend is. A legend's worth of courage in a situation no manual would ever recommend. De Glopper walked into that road knowing precisely what it meant, because his platoon needed the enemy looking at him instead of them. It worked. His comrades broke contact and reached the far bank and held the first bridgehead over the Meurthe River. When they came back over that ground, they found it strewn with dead German soldiers and the wreckage of the automatic weapons he had knocked out. He was killed where he stood. He became the only man in the entire 82nd Airborne Division to earn the Medal of Honor for the Normandy campaign. Walking fire was real. It just was not a tactic. It was, now and then, an act of sacrifice. If you would rather have the sourced version of these stories than the version Hollywood sells you, consider subscribing. That is the whole job on this channel. Now look at what the bar did in the hands of men who used it the way it was designed to be used. Near Cisterna, in Italy, in May of 1944, Technical Sergeant Henry Schauer of the 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, spent 2 days demonstrating what a BAR could do when it was aimed. Over that stretch, he killed 5 German snipers, each at a different range. He destroyed 2 machine gun crews, one at 60 yards and one a full 500 yards out. The next morning, he stood upright 80 yards from another German gun, tank shells bursting within 20 yards of him, and killed the entire crew with a single burst. His men called him Kraut an Hour Schauer. He earned the Medal of Honor, and he did all of it with aimed fire, prone and kneeling and standing, not spraying from the hip. But the hip fire charge did happen, in the rarest moments when everything else had failed. October 28, 1944, the Mortagne Forest near Saint-Dié in France. Staff Sergeant Lucien Adams of the 30th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, a Mexican-American kid from Port Arthur, Texas, whose company had been stopped cold trying to reopen a supply line cut to an isolated battalion. 3 men already dead, 6 wounded. Adams grabbed a borrowed BAR and went forward alone, dodging tree to tree, firing from the hip. He killed 9 German soldiers, knocked out 3 machine guns, and opened the road. Another Medal of Honor. That is walking fire in the historical record, not a doctrine printed in a field manual. A handful of men, in the worst moments of their lives, doing something close to suicidal because it was the only card left to play. So did the Germans actually hate the BAR? The honest answer is stranger than the title suggests. There is almost no German record of fear or hatred aimed at the weapon itself. When German ordnance officers got their hands on captured BARs, they filed them into their foreign equipment tables under a flat bureaucratic label. Light Machine Gun 123A. The A just meant American. No nickname, no dread. By their standards, a one-man automatic weapon with a 20-round magazine and a barrel that could not be swapped out was an underpowered little thing next to their belt-fed MG-42. And on pure volume of fire, they were right. The MG-42 outshot the BAR by every measure that gets printed on a spec sheet. The U.S. War Department knew it too. A 1944 training film actually told American troops that the MG-42's bark was worse than its bite, which was a morale lie, because the bite was terrible. But firepower on paper was never the contest the BAR was built to win. The German gun ruled the ground it could see from where it sat. The BAR ruled the ground the squad was trying to take. What the Germans respected, whether they ever wrote it down or not, was not the weapon. It was what the weapon let the Americans do. Keep moving, keep shooting, never give the machine gun time to settle in. None of which made the BAR a perfect weapon. Far from it. That 20-round magazine ran dry fast for a gun meant to lay down suppressing fire. The barrel was fixed in place, so in sustained shooting it overheated, and armorers burned through replacement barrels constantly. That was the single worst flaw next to the German gun and the British Bren, both of which changed barrels in seconds. The rate-reducing mechanism buried in the stock was fussy and hard to clean, and at 19.4 pounds, the thing was a brute to haul mile after mile through hedgerow and jungle. The men carried it anyway. When squads sent requests back to headquarters, they usually asked for more BARs, not fewer. The BAR outlived the war it helped define. It was still the backbone of the American Rifle Squad in Korea, where gunners wore belts of 12 magazines and the weapon, again and again, decided the outcome of an attack. The Army only began retiring it in the late 1950s, but the idea behind it never died. The Army tried to replace it, first with a heavy-barreled version of the M14 rifle that came out too light and overheated, and the concept limped along until belt-fed weapons took over the job. The true heir arrived in 1982. The M249 saw, belt-fed, one man, finally carrying the quick-change barrel the BAR had always needed, and the Marines eventually came full circle, back to a magazine-fed automatic rifle in the squad, the M27, the same basic idea Browning had sketched a century before. Which brings us back to a road outside Coquigny, and a very large young man who walked into the open on purpose. The general who handed Charles de Glopper's Medal of Honor to his father said something at the ceremony that has stuck ever since. He said that de Glopper did not fear fear. The weapon in his hands was not the best machine gun on that battlefield. It was never going to be. But it was the one that let a single soldier do the one thing the German war machine, for all its buzzsaw firepower, could never quite stop. Keep moving, keep shooting, and when it matters most, stand up.